recorded. Please mute your microphone during these panel speaker presentations, and there will be a question and answer session at the end of each of these presentations. Please post all questions in the chat, especially clarifying questions. If you hear, something that you'd like more information on or definition on, please post that in the chat. That way speakers can see that clearly, and we can ask questions if needed mid-presentation. If you have any specific logistical questions or challenges that arise, please feel free to email me or text me. I'll provide my contact information in the chat following these couple announcements. And like I mentioned before, this event is being recorded. The Northwest Eco Building Guild provides access to previously recorded events on our website through our membership content page. And it is also sent out to all registered event members. So it's a great, in this kind of digital age, it's a great opportunity to share this event multiple times. And we are also considering a rebroadcasting of this event. So for folks that aren't joining in now, we will probably re-show it at a later date for non-members and folks interested alike. A couple upcoming guild events to keep in mind: the September 28th Northwest Eco Building Guild's monthly education session. We'll be talking about building with non-toxic materials. That's next week on Zoom. We have some great speakers lined up for that. Please join us for that event. October 4th, we are actually holding a Northwest Eco Building Guild Education Committee retreat meeting. And what that consists of is paving the way for the rest of the year in what event topics members and non-members want us to cover. So every year we put on educational events. Please help us inform what you'd like to see us cover as an organization in the future. It could be Washington State Energy Code 2021 that's coming up around the corner. It could be maybe green roof, solar, whatever you're interested in the green building world, let us know. And we look forward to having your input on that October 4th meeting. Also, you can also vote for education topics for us to cover on our website. You'll see, I'll bring that up here. You'll see a button right here, vote for 2023 education topics on our website at ecobuilding.org, which I will also post in the chat. And then October 29th is our Northwest Green Building Slam. Please join us for that awesome event. It is both virtual and in person, so it's a great hybrid event to get involved with. We've got some great speakers lined up for that. And for more information, you can, of course, visit our website at ecobuilding.org for our events calendar section. I'll close our announcements today for everyone to remind them of membership renewals coming up, but also to remind folks to become a member if you aren't already. The Northwest Eco Building Guild, like I mentioned, provides member-only content, which consists of fantastic webinars, workshops, trainings, and events such as these that were previously recorded and can be accessible at any time. So if you need a refresher on the Washington State Energy Code 2018 version, we've got a training for that. Or maybe you're interested in the EC3 tool, we've got a training for that as well. Or if you're interested in the accessing this multifamily building event, please consider becoming a member to access the recording after today's event. Also, when you are a member, you receive access to all discounted pricing on events. We also have a code innovations database. Your company will also be featured on our Green Pages listing, which is like a directory that we send out of green builders, architects, vendors, designers, and fantastic networking opportunities. So please consider becoming a member today. Your membership provides us capacity to keep moving forward with these awesome events and keep holding them. And having wrapped up those announcements, I'd like to get into some sponsor highlights. We're going to start with two today. start off with 2 and kind of work our way through the event with more coming. But I'd like to pause and thank our premier sponsor, Tacoma Public Utilities. We'd like to highlight how they are helping clients save money and making their business or property more efficient. You can take advantage of business incentives and programs designed to lower your operating costs and utility bills from Tacoma Power and Tacoma Water. To find more, visit mytpu.org/biz. And I will go ahead and post that link in the chat as well. Thank you, Tacoma Public Utilities. You've been a fantastic sponsor of multiple Guild events, and we're excited to have you as a premier sponsor for this event. And I'd like to pause and thank 475 High Performance Building Supply. I have a fantastic video that I'll be showing from High Performance Building Supply. So just give me a moment to bring that up. I'll put it full screen, and please chime in, interrupt me if you cannot hear the audio, and I will fix that. But I think we're good to go on audio, but just let me know if you cannot hear it. And here's 475.
Hi, my name is Ian Nimmo, and I'm a product consultant at 475 High Performance Building Supply. 475 is a proud partner of the Northwest Eco Building Guild, having supported them as a sponsor and member since 2016. We are aligned with the Guild's goals of harnessing education to empower people to transform the built environment for long-term sustainability. 475 started with a mission to help building professionals find the materials they need, along with the knowledge necessary to create buildings that address the threat of climate change and to build like the future depends on it. The pathway to comfortable, healthy homes and workplaces is created with airtight, vapor-smart materials, safe and natural insulation, heat recovery ventilation, high-performance daylighting systems, good planning, and to design by taking advantage of Mother Nature's benefits. At 475, I'm based in Oregon, and I serve California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Nevada, and Arizona. I'm a certified BPI building analyst, a certified ResNet HERS rater, and a certified Passive House tradesperson. I can help you design airtightness details to meet Passive House levels of performance, support you with high-performance design decisions, heat recovery ventilation design, hygrothermal, moisture analysis, product support, pricing, and more. Don't hesitate to reach out. I welcome the opportunity to work with you on your project goals. And lastly, make sure to check in with 475's website, as we have much more than just great products. We have free ebook and DWG downloads of many high-performance assembly types that can save you time and effort. We hope you find a lot of great information on our website, and if you have additional questions, get in touch and we'll help you find the answers you're looking for. Thank you for your time and keep up the good work.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, 475, for that great great video. We have Ian on the line too. Ian, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you have anything to add, please feel free to chime in, or if folks have questions, please feel free to reach out to Ian. He's a participant and on the line in today's event.
Thanks, Nina. Yeah, happy to coordinate with anyone on the call, and reach out to me at ian@475.supply, and feel free to chat me today. I will be on the call.
Great. Thanks, Ian. And feel free to put your email in the chat too for folks. I am now super excited to welcome today's first speakers. We have Kathleen Petrie, the program manager and Green Building Community-wide for King County, and Rand Redlin, project manager for Centerra. Welcome. We are super excited to have you both. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and I have made you both co-presenters. So should be good to share your screen. And Kathleen, you have as long as you need, about 30 to 45 minutes. So please feel free to kind of have at it. And thank you so much. We're so excited and very grateful for both of you here and involved with today's event.
Great. Thank you so much, Nina. It's an honor to speak here today, and thank you all for sharing and asking questions. Yeah, please don't hesitate to ask any questions after the presentation. I think, how about Rand and you we both do a quick introduction of ourselves. Would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you for having us today, the Guild. And my name is Rand Redlin. I work for a company called Centera, and we are the project developer consultant to a nonprofit in East King County called Friends of Youth. And we'll be presenting the Friends of Youth project called New Ground Kirkland.
Thank you so much. Excited to partner with you here today, Rand. My name is Kathleen Petrie, and yeah, I'm program manager for green building at King County. I work in the solid waste division, and essentially my job is to support the advancement of green building through partnering with jurisdictions as well as the private development entities. So we'll kick this off. So a lot of the work, I'm gonna pop all that off there, that we do is driven through the King County Strategic Climate Action Plan, otherwise known as the SCAP. And this is a document that is basically the roadmap where climate equity it's the impetus for it. And so it's updated every 5 years. And there are 3 chapters essentially. And so we've got the sustainable and resilient frontline communities, our greenhouse gas emission reduction, and then our preparing for climate change and our ability resilience. And so each one of these sections is they have targets by which we're supposed to achieve things. So that could be a certain number of green building certified buildings by such and such a year. And then there are priority actions that are the steps we take to achieving those targets. And essentially that manages the work that I do. It is what releases the resources that can be allocated towards these efforts. And so 2 of the chapters I'm going to highlight today with their elements, because really they become the basis of a grant opportunity that came available that has been pretty exciting the last months to administer. And so the SRFC section is comprised of a climate equity community task force, which is based on it's essentially frontline community members as well as BIPOC community members formed to provide guidance to the strategic climate action plan. And these are elements from their priority actions that really address climate and equity. And so there's a demand, there's a need, there is a process of sharing stories. We need access to equitable development and healthy buildings. We want climate change considerations integrated into our affordable housing policies. How do we get folks access to as either tenants or owners or developers of renewable energy technologies? And then we need to be advocating for these voices to be a part of the policy decisions that are being made. And then how do we model that and replicate it throughout other county policies? And through our greenhouse gas emission reduction section, a lot of us in the exec's office, as well as myself, that focus more on the green building realm in the partnership with equity, is creating that financial assistance, and or development incentives that is going to encourage and continue to encourage green building methods and systems practices in our development. And what are those barriers that need to be removed that provide that access to safe, healthy, affordable housing? And then this last one here really is what the remaining of the presentation is on. It's like, how do we create that funding source for that delta between a base code building and a deeper green building? So something super exciting that came along this past year is somehow somebody found $20 million, and which is fantastic. And our budget office made it available to staff at any level to submit a proposal for these funds. And the condition was, though, that it needed to support climate equity. So those populations that have been, of course, historically marginalized, how is this going to enhance the lives of others? How are those voices going to be integrated into it? What jobs is it going to create? What is going to be the resulting outcome of your proposals? And so it was a super exciting opportunity. This has never come along in my time in government. And so I contacted my folks at that facilitate the housing finance program, which I'll talk more about in a little bit. and said, we have an opportunity here. And so together we developed a proposal for $6.5 million. And that proposal landed it was two buckets. There was $3 million for buildings to help them achieve zero energy, whereby the on-site solar array meets the needs of the anticipated energy use on site. And then $3.5 million for other general green building infrastructure within an affordable housing project. And the nice thing is that we could roll it into this award allocation. We could roll into the existing housing finance program process. And so there was a lot of back and forth with the budget office. And at the end of the day, we were awarded $5.5 million, and it was all in one bucket with one council requirement that at least one project needed to achieve zero energy as a result of these funds. So, sorry, trying to advance it here. So the housing finance program is, for those that aren't familiar, is an annual allocation of funds for affordable housing development. So projects apply and are evaluated based on certain criteria. The applications are due every September, and the funding is awarded in December. And the challenges and yet the advantages of when this funding was approved, the special grant fund was approved by council, is that it fell right in the middle of the application process. So the way it worked out is that those projects who had applied for 2021 housing finance dollars also had the ability to ask for green building dollars. So you can see here how much money is typically available on an award year just for the base costs. And now we had $5.5 million to add to that. And so I believe we had 4 applications, varying bits, sizes, pieces, components. And the great thing is that what we were providing or offering to these groups was not detracting from the base funds. And frankly, it allowed the expanded use of those funds, because there were some projects that had aspirational ideas of things that they wanted to incorporate, and others that were, no, the base funds will be used for these elements. So it allowed all dollars to stretch. And funding is very complicated, and we might get into that a little bit later, but essentially on this first award, we were able to grant 2 projects in $3.3 million. You can see here Friends of Youth, which Rand represents, as well as the White Center Community Hub, receiving also another 2.5, which left us with remaining funds that we would have to have a second round. And that second round would then have to apply towards a zero energy project. So as is the expectation, that is that it meets zero energy as defined by the International Living Future Institute. So I'm going to pass it off to Rand, who's going to share about his project and what they used these initial green building dollars as. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. As I mentioned earlier, I'm representing Friends of Youth, and Friends of Youth is a nonprofit that is located on the east side of Seattle, and is a service organization that provides housing, emergency shelter, counseling, behavioral health to children, youth, and young adults throughout Western Washington, primarily focused on the east side. They have over 27 different properties, dozens and dozens of programs, and hundreds and thousands of children, youth, and young adults throughout the east side, all the way to Snohomish County down to Renton. And they have been in existence for over 70 years and have a very good reputation in helping children, youth, and young adults. So I've had the opportunity to work with them since 2008. And during that time, Friends of Youth has done approximately 11 different projects, some housing, some social services, buildings. And they've always had the focus on building as green as possible. Many of you are aware that in the state of Washington, if you do get public funding for a housing project, that you agree to work within their guidelines of green building, and that's under the ESDS standard. Evergreen Sustainable Building Standard. And that's been going on since I've been involved in nonprofits. And it brings our buildings up that we're building with public funding a higher level than code to begin with. And as Kathleen mentioned, Friends of Youth did get an award for some green funding. I want to take you back a little bit about and tell you about the project first. In 2008, Friends of Youth purchased a 8-unit apartment building in Kirkland. And this building was a 60-year-old, 2-story, rundown, drafty old building that they were able to use for 12 to 13 years to house children and many fosters and foster kids and whatnot. From a program standpoint, it was not able to continue, and from an obsolescence, the building was not really able to house anybody else either. So over 4.5 years ago, we started discussing what the building could house and what would be the best usage for it. And we'll go into our process in a minute after I describe the building. So anyway, we took a building that they could have sold in Kirkland for a lot of money and decided to keep the building. And our first intention was to build a 25-unit on the building because it's almost a 10,000 square foot lot. 4 stories could easily give you 25 units of usable, affordable housing. Due to the zoning, and that building had been down-zoned since it was built, if we tore any of it down, we could build up to only 2 units. So our intention, and we pushed pretty hard with the city of Kirkland, our intention was to build a much bigger building. We also then, over a course of a period of time, realized that the city of Kirkland was not able to grant us any expansion on the building because it would trigger a lot of new zoning and code work that we couldn't afford on it. In 2018, we decided to maximize the building and use it for young adults. And when we decided to do that, we decided to build out some of the bedrooms in order to maximize the usage without adding units. 2020, we applied for funding both to King County, Arch, and the state. We were not able to get it. The funding application process is fairly long, and there's a lot of competition. Less than half of those apply, get the funding. We then reconstructed the building, decided to reduce, obviously, our ask of 25 units down to 15 young adults, and applied again in 2021. And that's when Kathleen mentioned the green building funding came about. And again, it's a very competitive process. And for many of you who know it, it's a process that we have to present to the funders a very solid project. We have so much feasibility from, phase 1 environmental, phase 2 environmental, lead, asbestos, methamphetamine, soils testing surveys, schematic, and even into permit drawings, cost estimations. And not only that, the organization is then checked out on its worthiness to continue this project over 50 years, because that's what the covenant and the loans are for. And also what is also considered is that Friends of Youth has to go out and obtain operational funding to make sure that they can operate this building for the length of that 50 years. And so it's a fairly complex, and should be a fairly complex presentation to the funders. When we heard that there were additional dollars in green, we looked at our ability to increase over and above code, over and above ESDS, to a higher green standard, the building. And we were able to present to King County during their application review period in the fall of 2001, what we could do, and we were successful in getting $800,000 for that. In addition, and that made the difference for us getting this project up and going, because we were not able to get any funding from the state. We did get some from Arch. We did get a special appropriation that we applied for about 4 years ago from the legislative biennium of 2021. Anyway, we were able to provide additional green improvements, and they're listed here. We went with a complete solar ready project, green sourcing flooring, increasing insulation in the ceilings, the attics, air tightening, very solid insulated doors and windows, high efficiency mini duct split systems, all the other water feature systems that would save in water and usage, off-gassing cabinets, obviously no VOC paint, and other recycling things. So that's kind of it in a nutshell of why we were achieved the funding from King County. In addition to that, we were also awarded TOD funding. One of the reasons Friends of Youth did not want to sell the building in that specific location, as you know, Kirkland's a very high-end area. It's very expensive to find property to build, but there's also a need. We were able to get TOD funding because we are within 3 blocks of a rapid ride that's going in next year. We're also walking distance, less than 2 blocks from the 405 corridor, where there's a park and ride and continuous bus service up and down 405 to the cities that are joined, from Renton up to Bothell, and the University of Washington in Bothell, and other campuses that our population will utilize. So because of the opportunity to work with King County Housing Finance, getting the green dollars, getting the TOD, we had enough in our budget along with Arch to get this building going, in the sense of starting the pre-development and building. So Kathleen, if you go to the next slide, wanted to tell you just a little bit quickly about the process. The process, as you know, youth and young adults, there's a huge demand for housing. Young adults that are being aged out of foster care, young adults that are coming from other parts of Washington and out of state that cannot afford, thinking of coming into the Puget Sound to get a job and easily get acclimated to the work environment. And there's a lot of jobs on the east side, but there's just no housing for young adults. A typical 1-bedroom in Kirkland is over $2,000 now. And obviously, if you're making minimum wage or $20 or $24 an hour, you're not going to be able to afford that. So our focus on this project, as we discussed it with all the people that are involved, the shareholders that are involved, which include other service providers in the area, the city of Kirkland, the neighbors who we engaged with, other nonprofits that have needs for housing, churches in the area, and also the cities of Arch, Bellevue, and Bothell, and some of the other ones. It was determined that finding housing for young adults that can use this as a foundation for getting maybe their first well-paying job and going to school. These young adults have to pay a portion of their income, and there's a lot of services that Friends of Youth provides, but they're required to be, good residents and become involved in the community and in Friends of Youth and whatnot. So we have a very diverse population that we serve, and the organization itself is BIPOC led and very diverse in its staffing. We're able to reach out not just to the east side. Most of our shelter guests that come over to our shelters on the east side are not necessarily from the east side. They're mostly from the west side, looking for a safe place to go. So we did an extensive grouping over a period of a year and a half to determine what the need was, get those funding for the operations and the services. And that's how we came to get the overall capital funding on this.
Thank you, Rand. Fantastic. It's an exciting project. The other exciting project that we were able to administer funding to is the White Center Community Hub. So it's going to be an anchor in this part of town. And so just the basic, project scope is, you've got 2 buildings, a 4-story residential structure housing 76 units. The unique thing about these is they're actual 4-bedroom units, so family size units. And then you've got a 2-story community center, which is going to house education, training, health care, things of that sort, things that the community needs. This is a destination place for community. And then they, of course, kind of pizza sandwich there, an outdoor public area for use. And it abuts huge park. And it's within a couple of blocks of the south end of the White Center Commercial District, so it's well positioned and much needed in this community. Part of an interesting component, and I'm hopeful that this will continue to be common use in all development processes, such as Rand has identified, is that community engagement process and that inclusionary process for people actually utilizing the space and it being a part of their community as a part of weaving in. And so the White Center Community Development Association and their partner Community Roots hosted a series of meetings just to see if they had support for this building. And so once finding that they did, they assembled stakeholders who identified, ideal locations, what services need to be offered, the site layout. So having that community center abut the property that abuts the park property, you can have a wall of window. So when you're in class or trainings or whatever, you're just basically sitting there in the park. And sustainability was a high priority for the community members. And then that the building program reflects and emulates relevance to the culture of the users. So super exciting process that resulted in these green building details, which were funded by the county. And so you see the DOAS systems and filtration systems. So they're promoting that indoor air quality, that high and the non-toxic, the low VOC finishes, interiors. There will be heat pump technology and triple pane windows, high building envelope. And then they have basically a budget and or allowance for both the solar array and the EV charging stations. So as much as could be afforded to them in the grant, they are able to expand these two elements just based on what dollars do we have to allocate. And so prior to COVID, the full array the intent was to do zero energy on the residential building for the residential building. They just didn't have enough site space in order to do it for both, but was going to be a cost of 1.3 million. That has exponentially changed due to the solar tariffs and whatnot that have gone on. And so that unfortunately got designed out of this particular project, but they will have a minimum 25 kW size. And then EV charging, their allowance began at 50,000 for EV infrastructure and charging stations. So hopefully they'll be able to grow and utilize that cash for more units than they thought they were going to be able to. As another component of their ESG support and is job creation. So both the White Center CDA and Southwest Youth and Family Services, who will be operating on site at the community building, they have relationships in programs such as RANS that support disadvantaged youth. And so making sure that training, education is provided, that people finish degrees and have the opportunity to achieve professional certificates and whatnot. And then in the actual project, the goal for WMBE hiring is 50%. So the general contractor has pledged to provide employment and job training opportunities to youth on site. And Sphere Solar, who's the solar contractor, is going to provide job training to youth for the installation of the system on that particular building. And then once the building is operational, White Center CDA and Community Roots has pledged to utilize local vendors and staff to operate the building. So having had what we consider a very successful round with 2 fantastic projects, we now have $2.2 million to offer and provide to open up to other potential projects. And so they released the RFP in May and awarded it just this last June. And any project that was going to apply for these funds, the goal, again, this is our commitment to councils, we had to have a minimum of 1 zero energy project. And so those were the criteria. It had to meet all 4 of these criteria. So you had to show registration with ILFI that you were going to go for ZE certification and that your design reflected that, and that you had received funding at some point in time in the last few years, but had not yet broken ground, but would by December 31st, because essentially we do have some timing on how this funding needs to be spent and time constraints for it or to be awarded by. So if anybody's interested, these are how the projects were scored, and the 2 highest ranking projects scored really high. And so we were able to award to 2 projects, the Homestead Community Land Trust, which is actually a single family duplex homeownership project, but I'm going to include it in this because it's really interesting in some of their approaches. And then Friends of Youth again applied, hey, we're going to expand and grow, and our opportunity for green building and sustainable living and lower utility bills and safer spaces for people to live in. So just a little bit of background on the Southard for those folks who knew Patty Southard. She was heavily involved in Homestead Community Land Trust's previous projects, the Willowcrest. In addition to actually, this project was previously called the Riverton. She passed away in 2019, and as a memoriam to her, they have changed the name from Riverton Townhomes to the Southard, which is very, very lovely. And so these are home ownership projects. 13 of the 18 units are at 30 to 80% AMI, 4 and 3 bedroom units. You can see the development costs. The neat thing or story about this project is that it is on a property that was part of a Methodist church in Tukwila. And Jan, the pastor there, contacted Homestead and said, your mission is in alignment with our mission. A huge percentage of my congregation would be well suited for your development. So Tukwila apparently has a home ownership percentage of just over 30% and a very high immigrant population of 70 some odd percent, which is reflects her congregation makeup. And so she thought that this was a nice pairing. And so I believe they gifted and or sold for very low cost the property to Homestead. And Homestead kept as their priorities in this project that it's got to be net zero. They're going to achieve Salmon Safe, which they did through the Waterworks grant, and indoor air quality needed to be high. And because of the population, on-site food production would be well utilized. So that had to be a big component of the property. And so we did end up awarding the cost for them to achieve their system. The zero energy system was 1.7, but they had a budget gap of 1.3 million. So that was the request, and that was what we awarded them. And then you can see the solar array size and inverters. Yeah, and so what Homestead is going to do is they're going to continue to collect data that's going to show the positive effect of net zero on total cost of housing. Because they are wanting very much to seek resourcing for home ownership projects and would love to do stacked flats. It's just, there's just this huge lack of funding available. And so great advocates. And so I'm going to pass it off again to Rand to share about his project.
Thanks, Kathleen. So since the beginning of the year, we were contemplating what we can do more in trying to get the New Ground Kirkland into a higher green category. And of course, the goal of zero net energy is is probably the biggest thing that we could do. And we started working with our consultants, the architects of Environmental Works, Tom Boulderson, and we brought in also Knox Services, Hunt Engineering, and through a connection that we had, we started working with King County Housing Authority's weatherization program, who has done extensive renovation and weatherization of existing buildings through their program, over 3,000 units. They also brought in Puget Sound Energy that's been very helpful in our project. So for the last 6 months or so, we've been working pretty diligently on how we can get an old, dilapidated, drafty 60-year-old building to a net zero capacity. It's been a learning process. Existing buildings are, as we found out, not easy to get there. We did our fuel analysis, determined, what our usage was for basically 15 units. And these are high occupancy, young adults that are very active, using a lot of energy. So we were able to get on the existing roof with the consultants and our proposed solar panel provider, Puget Sound Solar, a 40 kW array on the roof. It was our maximum. And our usage is about the same. We're still working back and forth and looking at everything that we can do to, make sure that we're in that balance. We're not completely there yet. We're still adding some things and looking for ways of enhancing the array by talking with the fire department to expand it on the roof and maybe on in different areas, but we're restricted. This is a very urban area. There's apartments around us, there's trees around us, and the building is laid kind of east and west and not really conducive for the best array possible. But we're moving forward. We're very pleased and happy that King County Green Tools and King County Housing Finance has allowed us these funds. We determined that it's an approximately $700,000 to get us to this ability. We already had a lot of the money built in, so we asked for $530,000 to put this in. The array is about 150,000, might creep up a little bit more, but we've been able to, rebuild. The projection is to rebuilding these walls with exterior insulation that's going in the ground, cram down of insulation in the walls for dense packing. We have a high efficiency boiler system, circulating water with 4 heat pumps for the hot water. We have high efficiency mini duct systems throughout, triple pane windows, of course, ventilation systems. We've kind of thrown everything that's available for a renovated type building to get to where we're at. We're struggling to get there. We're pretty sure we're going to make it, but like any project, we're not greenwashing. If we don't get it, then we don't get the money. So as a small organization like Friends of Youth, if we feel that we can't deliver on that after the certification in 1 year, we're not able to take the money and have to pay it back. And the good thing about public institutions in Washington is that when they put something out, you've got to hold to it, and that's with any of the funding. This is a prevailing wage project that has a lot of parts to it that are required for a nonprofit to operate housing, and it's expensive to build, and we have to sometimes balance how many units we can get for the features that we provide. So we'll hope to be back next year with a fully net zero building, but we're still kind of struggling with it. Like anything, sometimes we as nonprofit developers and affordable housing are pushed by the state and ourselves to try things that maybe for-profit developers will not, because of the funding crunch in their formula. It is about money. We hope to save money on electricity, but we also hope to provide and we already are to King County Housing Authority's weatherization, ideas that can help maybe in other buildings that want to get close to or get net zero in existing buildings. So excited to share this. Really appreciate what the EcoBuild does, the Guild, and appreciate the opportunity to discuss this. And we wish you luck. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rand. What Rand's speaking to is just achieving ZE is complex already, and these are the added complexities for an existing building project, which is why it's so exciting. And the county is working closely with Rand to continue to provide support so we can get across that finish line. This is an exciting project. And in that, also, we have nearly $400,000 remaining in this climate equity funds. And so that is being awarded in December. So, and it will be awarded to those who will have applied for this housing finance program funding round, which started in September, will close in December. And so it'll be interesting to see what we're able to support there. But the projects that you've seen today, we have 100, it represents almost 100 dwelling units of folks that are going to be living in healthier homes with cheaper to operate. And these are the exciting opportunities. So we are working to try to find reliable sources. This was a one-time opportunity. How do we replicate this? How do we make sure that this is more stable? And so as federal dollars are becoming more available in the upcoming year, we will be looking at all resources and in order to be able to offer these to our affordable housing folks to go that next level, to achieve the zero energy, to achieve those high performing envelopes and systems. So thank you again very much for the opportunity to present here today and for the invitation from the Northwest Eco Building Guild. And we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kathleen and Rand. That was wonderful. Does anyone have any questions for Kathleen and Rand? While folks are pausing to think of theirs, I have one. We're still trying to get a better understanding of the impacts the Inflation Reduction Act will have on housing, especially as it pertains to multifamily buildings. Has the King County office, especially in your department, Kathleen, understood or have prepared or is gaining a better kind of future look ahead to how the Inflation Reduction Act will provide future support as it pertains to specifically multifamily housing?
I don't know that level of detail. However, the exec's office is currently dissecting the plan and preparing information for us that will be disseminated shortly. Really good question, though, and I'm excited for that and CETA funding.
Nina, are we supposed to just jump on the camera to ask a question or something?
Yes, please feel free to do so. Any format is welcome.
All right. Hi, I'm Lucas. I'm a board member at the Eco Building Guild. It's awesome to be here today. I love what you guys are doing. I live in Tucson, Arizona these days, and have a business that does development work mostly in Phoenix. We want to do roughly a 20-unit project, trying to do it, obviously as sustainably as possible, but also make it as affordable as possible. Interest rates are kind of booming at the moment. Did you find that in your process of, making these projects happen, that having these sustainability or social equity features helped with, bank negotiations, better terms in any way, or did that just not matter?
Thanks for the question, Lucas. We don't get traditional bank funding, but we, at the same time, we have to project a 15-year operation cycle on this project. And what it allows us to do is provide better housing and less expenses for that housing. In our case, we pay for the electric bill for these young adults. They don't have to pay that out. It's part of their rent that they have to pay. But
Okay.
it allows us, because we do have some debt service from the TOD funds. It allows us to have more funding because we don't have to pay so much debt because we have reduced operating expenses. So being a private developer in the past, I would think that any bank, and now that, you know, higher efficiency buildings and solar panels are widely accepted, you can demonstrate pretty readily your savings. They should be able to then say your operating expenses are lower, your value is higher, your building is better able to cash flow and be able to take on more debt. So I think it would help. I'm sure you'll find some.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's
Thank you for
exciting.
that answer. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm curious kind of about the policy side too. It's certainly not my expertise, but the city of Phoenix sure sounds like they want the type of development we're trying to do, but it doesn't really seem like there's much out there that's explicitly helping us do it. In
right.
fact, there's a lot of barriers to doing it. In your experience, what are some of the effective advocacy things that we could do locally, you know, to try to help make this a little easier for not just us, but other people, right? Like the whole point of what we're trying to do is show that it can be done so other people do it.
Exactly. Good.
Yeah, that's a great question, Lucas. The couple of questions for you is, do they have a strategic climate action plan, something that you can attach to put back in front of them, and then maybe gather your professional associations in as a single voice and say, we want this, you say you want this, and then try to create that plan together to move forward. So what has always kind of been a part of my method is anytime you can codify something, you get there faster. And so, and the industry moves and shifts with it, but it makes building equitable. As you know, if everybody has to have a heat pump, then, you know, everybody has to have a heat pump. And that's the base, right? And so you could drive them towards advancing their local codes. You could, what we're going to be doing over the next 6 months is basically documenting all of the potential funding sources that are available. And if you, I can send that to Nina and she can distribute that because it'll be posted on our sites. But you can put that in front of them and say, hey, there are these opportunities. You know, Snohomish County applied for grant funds back when they were available. And it's, you know, that they were expecting that money, that it was a revolving account basically to run out in like 2 years, and it's been going on 10 or 12 years now. And so those are the things that they can do to continue to support you. You could have, you know, zoning code analyses of some of those are the barriers and provide suggestions on, you know, other approaches to take by, you know, example, cities.
And how do you actually set up that meeting? Is it literally just finding a local representative, emailing them saying, hey, this is what we're trying to do? And this
yeah. And you know, and I'm sorry, did you say Phoenix or Tucson?
I'm in Tucson, where this is a lot easier. Most of our development work is in Phoenix. I run our building science, you know, consulting services. And my business partner, who's been in Phoenix for quite a while and has done a few developments out there now, you know, we're trying to continue to take what we're doing to the next level, focusing on missing middle type development. It seems like it's all stuff that's very popular, relevant, and powerful in shifting the market. There are a lot of, you know, the local university, ASU, would definitely support this. We have some connections there. I think we could probably knit together an interesting group of people. That's super useful input, is basically what I'm rambling on to say.
Yeah, I would just ask, and I would come with all those voices and say, we would like to convene these, you know, this is our intent. And if Phoenix doesn't have a sustainability lead of some sort, I'd be surprised just due to their size, but, you know, we can hunt that down and see.
They do, but there's so often the conflict between state level politics and city level politics down here. One of the jokes I've said recently, I guess it's not even a joke, I just find it funny, but if Green Building was a video game, Phoenix would be the final boss, right? I've done this in a lot of markets, California, Oregon, Washington. There are challenges, but it's next level here at times. So yeah. we're in those nascent stages. So it's really nice to be able to hear from markets that are so much further ahead than what's here. And I don't know, I could call it a good building ecosystem, something like that.
Mhm.
Wish you the best of luck in that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so we probably have other presentations and stuff. I'll stop asking questions now. But thank you so much. That's just very inspiring. It gives me some hope in this fight we have going on.
Thanks, Lucas, for those awesome questions. If folks have more questions for both Kathleen and Rand, please feel free to engage and continue the conversation in the chat, as well as I wanted to leave time for our final presentation. And we can also bring back Kathleen and Rand if they're available to stick on after our final presentation today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So thank you again, Kathleen and Rand, for your involvement in today's event. Another thank you to a wonderful sponsor of ours, who's also a fantastic partner and provides access to their amazing Zoom account to be able to do these wonderful webinars, trainings, and events. I'd like to thank Mighty Energy Solutions. They are powering our spaces inexorably toward electrification and away from combustion fuels like natural gas. More and more municipalities are adapting building codes designed to expedite this transition. Seattle, for example, has moved to the forefront of large cities in this respect by adopting new code that bans gas heat for new multifamily and commercial real estate projects with more than 3 stories. This means that heat pumps and far infrared radiant heat, either in combination or on their own, are only efficient solutions available that comply with Seattle standards. Especially since so much of Washington's electricity comes from hydropower, this new proactive code promotes a far healthier indoor air quality for all these new projects, as well as decarbonizing a sector that remains a large contributor to our overall carbon footprint. And our supply of electricity is only going to get cleaner and cleaner moving forward. Mighty Energy has been an active part in this trend toward the electrification of buildings. They are so proactive, as well as for many years, and is pleased to continue this role and its ongoing and expanding solutions. So I welcome you all to check out mightyenergy.net, also posted in the chat, of their infrared heating solutions for your next multifamily project. And I'd also like to pause and thank Walsh Construction, who's been a longtime Northwest Eco Building Guild member and sponsor and supporter, as well as speaker of a lot of our events. Walsh Construction has built over 56,000 affordable homes in our 60-year history, constantly balancing cost efficiency with durability and performance. In-house expertise on building envelope coordination and air tightness helps clients pursue LEED, Passive House, or ILFI. Select green projects from Walsh Construction include Hobson's Place, which is pursuing Passive House certification, Community Roots Housing Station Homes, which is a LEED Platinum for homes, multifamily building, and the Capitol Campus Child Care Center, which is going for LEED Gold and Net Zero. Walsh is listed on the ENR 2020 list. Top 100 green general contractors in the US, which is just fantastic. Congrats to Walsh, and thank you for your continued support of the Northwest Eco Building Guild's events. Awesome. I am going to introduce now our second speakers. We are super lucky to have Michael Niall on today. He is the Senior Program Manager with ClearResult, as well as the President of the Northwest Eco Building Guild Board. So welcome, Michael. And I believe Tom as well, Tom Balderston, if he's on, he's the Senior Green Building Consultant with Balderston and Associates, LLC. Welcome both Michael, and if Tom is on as well. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen and give you the floor, Michael.
Thank you, Nina. I think, did my camera come up? There we go.
Yes, now we can see you. Great.
It's great to be here with everybody, and I just want to let you know that yes, Tom Balderson, who was mentioned earlier, will be joining us. It looks like he's connecting now. I think I might have given him the wrong start time this afternoon, so I apologize for that.
I'm here.
Getting on here, Tom.
Hi, Tom. Welcome. Great to have you here.
Tom and I will be discussing indoor air quality. And we'll be discussing it as far as new multifamily construction, and then talking about with existing multifamily construction. Air quality, as you know, is extremely important, and it becomes even more so when we get into multifamily housing, because it affects thousands, hundreds of thousands of people up in our region here. And we want to discuss that a little bit. So what we're going to do is Tom's going to talk a little bit about the new construction side of things, and then I'll touch on the existing indoor air quality side of things. Then we're going to touch on a few areas that are challenges and opportunities, and then we'll open it up for questioning. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to you, Tom, and
Okay.
you can, start your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, great. Let me share a screen here.
Fantastic. I've made you. Oh, perfect. Awesome. I made you co-host.
Yeah. Energy Code Roadmap.
Looks fantastic. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Tom.
Great. So yeah, I'm Tom Balderson. Just to give you some background, we are a small company. We do Built Green LEED passive house certification and verification and energy modeling. So we also do a lot of code compliance consulting with new construction, both single family and multifamily. So we get the opportunity to work on and walk through a lot of buildings. I thought I would talk about some of the changes in the energy code that are affecting new multifamily buildings, some of the things that are coming up, and then the indoor air quality changes as well. One of the key things of that is a requirement for HRVs. So as you many of you may know, we have a law in Washington State passed in 2009 that requires our energy codes to advance every 3 years, and until we have 70% less energy use than 2006 energy code by the 2030 code cycle. And we are in the 2018 code has just recently come into effect now. It's always late. That's the thing you do. Like the 2018 code goes into effect in 2021. So it's always, I mean, somewhere along the line, I forget where that got started, but it always took a couple of years to confirm and discuss and testify and get the codes actually adopted. Let's see, where's my button to advance that? Another piece of legislation that's coming in here is the benchmarking rule, so that multifamily buildings are included in the commercial building requirement for benchmarking. So as of this year, this law has been in effect for a while, but it's starting to be enforced as of this year. So buildings have to set up an Energy Star Portfolio Manager account and track their buildings. It's not that difficult to do, but your building gets connected with the utility for automatic data sharing, and that's something that's coming in. Briefly, to talk about the changes in Washington State Energy Code that are really, I think, changing the industry right now. This is a quick list of what the energy requirements are of the code, and I have a tendency to make charts of each code and show the things that have changed quite a bit. One of the big things that's changed in the 2018 code is the wall R value or U value. The wall insulation now has to get this 0.051. In order to get that, you probably need to use a 2x8 wall framing with like an R25 insulation, or use exterior rigid insulation. And exterior insulation or improved walls is one of the things that's happening in this code. It's coming in the next code in residential as well. So we'll be looking at, we'll all be dealing a lot with new ways to build walls. And to some extent, the folks doing green building have already worked this out, but for everybody else to work it out, it's going to take some time. Many of the other requirements for the building envelope are the same. They have not changed that much. What changes in the codes now as we advance is much of it is in what's called the options menu. And again, many of you are probably familiar with this now, but this was kind of a surprise. Like a year and a half ago, everybody was still kind of going, well, what is that? But you have to pick enough options to get, in Washington State Code, you have to get 8 credits with these options. And you can choose whichever option in Group R that works out best for you. So if you want to do solar, you want to do enhanced envelope insulation, pardon me, you can choose that option. Gives the builder a lot more flexibility as far as cost effectiveness to pick out the right thing. And certainly we can do questions on those. One of the big things, I'm going to skip that. One of the other big changes is that, both to meet that options menu, and if you happen to be in Seattle or Shoreline where we have natural gas restrictions in new buildings, heating water with natural gas has been the standard, and it's going to start to change quickly to heating with heat pumps. So you'll see boiler rooms that look like this give way to things that look like this or this kind of thing. And some of these new heat pumps are carbon dioxide based heat pumps that are really extremely efficient, and the global warming potential of the heat pumps are much less. A lot of work has been done. Ecotope's been a leader in this. So if you need to talk to me or get references, you can look up some of the work that Ecotope's done on multifamily hot water heating. One of the big moves is to make start to do pre-assembled skid mounted hot water systems that can be, to make them less expensive and to slide them into the building and prefab a lot of that plumbing work. So now on to indoor air quality. Just briefly to open that discussion, the energy code is not where this sits. This sits in the new 2018 mechanical code, in the uniform or the International Mechanical Code. And there's a requirement for heat recovery ventilation in apartments. So each apartment has to have fresh air ventilation that serves all the rooms that has heat recovery. And this is a big change because most apartments were being ventilated with trickle vents in the windows and a whole house type exhaust fan. Usually a like the Panasonic Whisper Green or the Delta, really super efficient exhaust fans, and those would just pull air out of the apartment, and fresh air would come in either through the trickle vents or from other cracks and openings into the corridors. But the heat recovery will be balanced ventilation in each unit. I didn't make up a lot of photographs of that. This is one strategy for ventilation has become, you can basically either do central ERVs, like a rooftop system that is ducted to each apartment that includes heat recovery on it. Those units have been around for quite a while. Or you can do an in-unit HRV, like something like the Panasonic, oh shoot, I forget the name of it. Panasonic IntelliBalance is called, or some of their manufacturers like LifeBreath now have like an urban model. And these are HRVs that are kind of flat, usually maybe 8 inches deep, so they can fit in a in a soffit or a drop ceiling somewhere within the apartment. Really, really nice units, really efficient. Another strategy that's happening, I've heard, like I say, I'm not a mechanical engineer, so I don't want to get too deeply into this, but is to use something like the Spot ERV. Panasonic makes one called Whisper Comfort. And you put that Spot ERV in maybe the living room near the outside wall. And then you put like a transfer fan that moves air into the bedrooms, into that extra bedroom or the 2 bedrooms. And that's a pretty well-known approach because the transfer fans are already being put in a lot of 1-bedroom units. And it's probably less expensive and simpler than doing a ducted, an HRV system that is ducted. Certainly during the questions, ask, if you're not familiar with HRVs or any of these ideas, happy to discuss those. But that's probably, I would say, the biggest 2 changes in the new code, or the biggest 3, are the wall insulation, the hot water requirement, moving to heat pump systems for hot water, moving away from natural gas. And I've just read that the next code cycle, the Code Council has, I believe, already adopted a limitation on natural gas in commercial buildings. And then the ventilation requirement, which will be a benefit to indoor air quality. They're just a little more expensive to put in, and there's a lot of knowledge, I think, that has to develop among the crews and the installers on how to put HRVs in properly and how to balance them so that they operate evenly, and that the designers decided how much airflow has to go to each space, and checking that when you're finished to make sure your ductwork is run efficiently. But yeah, we can discuss all that and get back to that. The last thing I'll mention is this kind of idea of what if there was a simple roadmap to get to that 2030 building right now, and we do have builders doing this, and one of the systems is called Passive House. The idea of a passive house, the concept passive house, is really a building that is very well insulated and that has very good windows so that you have much less heat loss from the windows. And it's very airtight. You have reduced thermal bridges, so you have to watch the details of construction. And then you have the building's very, very airtight, but you have plenty of fresh air with an advanced heat recovery ventilation system. So the passive houses, tend to be even though they're very airtight, they tend to be very, very, very good on air quality. We have one builder. We have builders, we have 3 of these, I think, now under construction or nearly finished in Seattle. And just so you're aware, passive house is growing really rapidly in other parts of the country. Vancouver, BC is one of the examples, but also New York City and Toronto and Boston. You're starting to see 40-story buildings done in the passive house system. And I think you'll see a lot more of this to come. I think that's a good introduction for now, and we'll move back to questions if you want to take the sharing away, Dina.
Yeah, sure thing. Does anyone have any questions for Tom? And feel free to unmute. And if you're comfortable, you can put on your video or post in the chat.
That was kind of a rocket run through, but I apologize. But I guess I understood we have limited time, and we wanted to try to get some discussion going, like how are these code changes affecting you? What do you think about some of these systems, and particularly indoor air quality issues that they bring up?
Yeah, those are fantastic discussion points. Does anyone want to chime in regarding the impacts of these code changes Tom mentioned? Rand or Kathleen, have you seen any impacts to your project designs?
I actually have a question. Tom, based on your opinion, do you think we're going to have supply chain issues? There's always that concern with the heat pump technology in particular. And do you think it is really true that there will be access issues to the technology?
I don't really have expertise in that. It makes a lot of sense that there would be. I think well, probably a good time to buy some stock in Panasonic, or Mitsubishi, or one of these heat pump companies. It makes perfect sense that there be supply chain issues as people all order. But I guess the other piece of that is these are really big companies, and they probably are better set up to respond to suddenly a need for 20,000 more HRVs in Seattle.
Excellent. And other question, if you've got a 40-story passive house building, just off the top of your head, if that was being designed under the Seattle Energy Code, would there be code conflicts with the methods having to be used versus, say, what the state now might require? Anything that stands out?
Passive house is a code compliance pathway in
That's right.
Washington. So it's one of the options you have is just certify a passive house and comply with the code.
Okay.
But it would exceed the code requirements in most cases. I don't think there'd be significant issues unless anybody else wants to bring something up there.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the passive house would have heat recovery ventilation. It would have advanced insulation in the walls. And I guess the water heating with all electric water heating would be something that wasn't necessarily required in the past, but passive house is certainly moving that way as well.
Any more questions for Tom or discussion points?
Nina, perhaps I could jump in here and just talk a little bit about retrofit, and then Tom, if you and I could have a discussion after I talk for a minute here about moving forward here.
Fantastic. Awesome, Michael. I'll give you the floor and let me know when you'd like me to share my screen regarding the
Perfect.
air sampling program.
So I wanted to just talk a little bit about the retrofit, the existing properties out there, because coming from Oregon all the way up through Washington State, we have literally hundreds of thousands of units that are existing, and the air quality in some of these is just terrible. I have been involved with multifamily in this area for 12 years now. I've been in literally thousands of units, and some of them are just not good places to live. And when we listen to Tom talking about new construction has come a long way, and they're well leapfrogged ahead of the retrofit, the existing properties, especially the ones from the early 90s, 80s, 70s, and older. So what do we do with these properties? We've got to figure out a way to improve them and bring them forward. King County, as was presented earlier by Kathleen, is doing a lot to improve those. The utilities are doing a lot. They're offering incentives for ventilation systems, for heat pumps, for insulation. They're really starting to help these buildings and improve them, but we still have a long ways to go. One of the biggest challenges that I see in these buildings is moisture. You get into a 2 and a 3-story plus building, and that first floor is just filled with mold. You have troubles controlling it. One thing that I see that is working And I just want to highlight it here and talk about it a little bit. Then I'm going to jump over, bring Tom back in and talk further. But Nina, if you could put on the screen, I've been involved with most of the utilities up here, Tacoma, Seattle City Light, Puget Sound Energy over the last few years. And Puget Sound Energy, about 8 years ago, we designed a program as the first of its kind in the country for multifamily, existing multifamily. We created a whole building air sealing program. And this program was designed to take care of the building envelope, which has created a lot of problems on these older buildings. It involves the ASHRAE requirement for ventilation. Of course, as Tom pointed out, it's exhaust only, which isn't 100% ideal, but it does the job of providing the ventilation we need. But the ideal thing here is that with this, we are taking that first step. And this program that Puget Sound offers is available in their gas and their electric territories. And it's a lot of times free to the customer. But what it's doing is it's taking away those excessive moisture problems that we're finding that are creating these poor indoor air quality problems that we're seeing in so many of these properties out here. As I mentioned, all the utilities are involved in different aspects of property improvement, which includes Tacoma, Seattle, Puget Sound Energy, and there's a strong need here. If nothing else, I just want to create an awareness that we have thousands and thousands and thousands of people living in poor air quality, whether it's off-gassing VOCs, whether it's mold, and that affects our communities. We're a community-based organization, the Northwest Eco Building Guild, and we care about our communities. And right now, multifamily is where our poorest residents live. They don't have a choice. They live in multifamily that's substandard throughout the region. And we all have to get involved and work together to improve these buildings and bring them up to a higher standard, because it affects their health, it affects their well-being, it affects everything around us. I want to, Nina, if you could clear the screen, and Tom, if you could join me. I just want to start this dialogue. Tom has been a building scientist since day one. I remember the first time I heard Tom talking about indoor air quality, I think was in an eco building event almost 11 years ago. And Tom, I want to ask you the question. I know that we have the benchmarking requirement, and a lot of these existing multifamily buildings are going to fall under that, and they're going to have to improve their building envelopes. They're going to have to improve their ventilation systems to reduce the energy loads that they're required to meet in the coming years. But how do we get existing buildings to start to catch up to new construction? How do we do that, Tom? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you're referring to the benchmarking law was, I think, earlier just require you to benchmark, but the clean buildings legislation passed, I think, last year, will require these older buildings, if they're over 50,000 square feet, and correct me if I'm wrong, they actually have to hit targets by 2028 and fix it if they don't hit the target. So I don't know, Michael. I mean, I think the older, I've done a lot of energy audits over the years, and I did do a fair number in multifamily buildings. I'm thinking of the sort of the old brick buildings on Capitol Hill in Seattle. And I think, you know, one of the biggest things they'll be doing is changing their windows, and if they still have old wooden windows, and changing their hot water equipment, or because they have, most of those buildings have like a gas boiler in the basement the size of a Volkswagen bus that, you know, is like 1 million BTUs and is pretty inefficient. So maybe they'll be putting duct heat pumps or something in. There's a lot of great retrofit stuff coming out in terms of like heat pumps that there's one that sort of hangs out of the window like a saddle. So but these would be like, instead of having a ductless heat pump, which requires you have to find a place for that outside unit. Either you have a whole lot of them on the roof, or in China, they stick them on the outside of the building, which probably won't go here because people won't like the way that looks. And there's some very exciting new technology with air quality too. So, I mean, I think, as I mean, the retrofits that Dan Auer has been doing for years with King County Housing, I think are probably one of the best examples of repairing old buildings. And what I understand that he's been doing a lot is doing dense pack wall insulation on wooden buildings. I think a lot of them are 2-story type multifamily buildings that some people call woody walk-ups. And then adding these spot ERVs. And I think he has it down to like a fixed price for install. His contractors have to do it. And they'll add that spot ERV into the front hall or the main space. And it's really been improving air quality just by creating ventilation, because as you say, a lot of these oldest buildings don't have ventilation that really works right.
Do you think, Tom, the spot ERVs, the ones that are coming through the walls on these apartments are going to be efficient when we get into larger units and they've got the back bathrooms and this is out in the living room? Are we going to be able to address the air quality issues that are existing?
Well, I mean, you make me think about the ASHRAE 62.2 ventilation codes, and all the way in the past, they have not required that you distribute the fresh air around the home. They've just required that you put it in there. And I think there are some studies that show that you get reasonably good dispersal if the bedroom doors are left open. Probably not. I mean, if the unit's really large, probably not. But most are the apartments you're looking at large 2 bedrooms? Or, I mean, I'm used to Seattle and the apartments are really small.
Yeah, when I look in the outlying areas, the apartments do vary in size, but you do get bigger apartments. And I think that when you get into those, like I said, the lower units where we have the most problems, the airflow has a challenge. And if it's exhaust only or in the living room only, it becomes a challenge, like you said, to ventilate that whole area.
Well, you might have to put a second one in the master bedroom, or you might have to do, I mean, something with the little spot ERVs, I mean, that is an issue because they only do about 40 CFM of fresh air, or that 40 exhaust, 30 is fresh. So that's not enough for a large apartment. So you'd need either more than one of them, or go to a, depending on the cost, go to a IntelliBalance or one of these little flat apartment style HRVs. If the units are heated by electric baseboard, there could be some benefit to getting heat pumps in them too. And one of the things that's evolving that I think is really exciting is the combination HRV heat pump, which would be, I know you've heard of these, but it doesn't need an outdoor unit because it's pulling in air from the outside anyway. And it both conditions and filters the fresh air supplied to the unit. And you get both functions in one box. I don't think those are on the market anymore. I don't know that anybody's been able to get those yet, but I know they're out there. They're on the way. But yeah, for larger units, you've got to distribute air, and I think especially if people keep their bedroom doors closed, you don't get very good distribution of air from. I guess, I mean, the other thing, if you're talking about moisture and mold problems, you have to solve that issue first. Find out what's the source. Is it leakage? Is it, is it a basement apartment with leakage through the foundation? What's the source of the water? And how do you dry that out? So there's kind of maybe some building science forensics there to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I would say on older buildings, on the 2- and 3-story buildings, it's the stack effect, and it's being pulled up through the floor because the floors aren't sealed. There's a lot of penetrations through there, so we do a
Yeah.
air movement.
Yeah, we looked at a bunch of houses. Eileen Gagne and I looked at houses in the Tulalip Reservation,
Mhm.
and they had some really serious. They had houses that were built in the 70s and 80s that had no ventilation in the crawl space and no plastic on the surface of the crawl space. And we said that air sealing, they have to add the ventilation, but they also need to really air seal those floors.
Yeah.
And that's not that difficult to do. But air sealing the floors would be number one. And then making sure that crawl space gets proper drainage and proper vapor barrier on the floor. And, it has to be continuous plastic. It's not folded up and messed up. And, as in the PSE programs, they'll put staples to hold it to the floor or seal it to the outside walls. But if you've got a wet site and a wet crawl space and air leakage through the floor, yeah, you're going to have a real problem.
Yeah, most of the utility programs require that that's mitigated before the upgrades are done. Like you said, the installation's added or the air sealing's done. Those problems are addressed. Tom, how do you think, because even new construction, there's still challenges with air quality, obviously. How do you think we're set up, and what do you think we should be looking at in the future here to address warmer climates, probably continuous smoke, perhaps another outbreak such as COVID that threatens living in multifamily environments? Are there other things?
You're right. I mean, I think the new apartments, I walk through a lot of them. I think they're very good on air quality. They're actually freaking excellent on moisture penetration. I mean, new buildings are being built with triple redundant window flashings and seals. So all those rot problems that we had from buildings in the 90s, I just don't think they're going to happen on new buildings. But you're right, they don't have a response to smoke, except that you could shut down the corridor ventilation, and you could shut off, the code requires that the occupant has to have a switch to turn off the ventilation fan that's accessible. So you could show people how to turn those off. My personal favorite is, especially for low-income people, is the box fans with the air filters taped to them. It's pretty, you take 3 MERV 12 filters and tape it to a box fan, and it makes a really effective. We used those in the 2 years ago when the smoke was really bad. They're inexpensive and they're very effective to get through a few weeks of smoke. But yeah, you basically want to seal your windows, close it up, and then filter in that situation. I don't know that it's worth putting any kind of permanent system in for smoke, even though people want to do that. That's my personal opinion, that room air cleaners work. And you just keep them in the closet and get them out in August.
Well, I certainly think there's a lot of great technology coming on the market with the HRVs, the ERVs, the heat pumps, and the utilities stepping up and getting more involved in air sealing and protecting these buildings. The code changes, so I think we're moving the right direction. But we just and I'm going to keep arguing that we need to do more on the existing buildings, especially the older ones.
Absolutely.
It's
Michael, what do you
not a
think
good
about
place.
issues like smoking and cooking smells getting from one apartment to another?
So on the pre-1990 buildings, before the fire codes started tightening up buildings in between units, that is a real problem. That is probably the biggest area of indoor air quality that affects unit to unit, other than off-gassing and moisture. But King County, speaking of King County again, King County has experimented with Aero Barrier, Aero Seal. It's got a few different trade names.
Barrier.
And they've gone into a couple of their properties and that were vacant, and they've used that. It's a system that's been used in ductwork for years and years and years to seal the cracks in ductwork to make those more efficient. But they've been able to use that now inside a unit that's empty and nobody's living in, and seal that up. And that's been able to a certain degree, seal up unit to unit where we see those challenges. But you're absolutely right, Tom. That will be an ongoing challenge going forward. We've actually discussed it with Puget Sound Energy to see if there's a way that we can create a rebate to go forward and do that on buildings. But it is a challenge when you have people living in every single unit.
Yeah, I think one of the other big challenges with multifamily older buildings and low-income buildings is that people put in room air conditioners. People leave the windows open. And so I guess that's mainly an energy efficiency challenge, but it could also be something that adds to the stack effect that causes the ventilation system. A few years ago, I was asked to do a couple blower door tests in the Fry building, which is down across from King County Administration Building downtown. And it's a luxury hotel from like 1905. And I think it's 25 stories, something like that. And it's low income housing. I got up there and realized the building was made of solid concrete, so there wasn't be any issue with air leakage from the building itself. But it was a really cold day. It was like 25 degrees. And I went outside and looked up, and about maybe a quarter of the apartments were had the windows open. And it was partly because there was no smoking allowed in the windows, so people like to sit with and kind of hang out the window to smoke. But the other interesting thing was I went up to the front door and put a pressure gauge in the front, across the front door, and found just this huge negative pressure at the front door, which meant the building was just sucking. The stack effect in that building was so strong, and there was ventilation in every unit, but probably the exhaust fans in the whole bottom like 5 floors probably were not working at all because of that. So I mean, it's interesting. Stuff goes on with especially taller buildings that you have to address.
Yeah, and I think that as we get additional funding coming in, I think it'll help to fix some of these issues and improve some of these older buildings. Like I said, King County is doing a lot on that. We've got the utilities also doing a lot to promote that. And then a lot of the other agencies throughout the state of Washington also are really, really pushing to improve that. But we've got a long ways to go. And like I said, just comparing what you showed us earlier to what's out there on the existing side, is the gap is just getting wider and wider. It's scary.
I mean, it's kind of like maybe it's a microcosm of society, where because these new apartments are fairly expensive, and our codes are advancing, they're getting cleaner and cleaner and more energy efficient. And yeah, we need to, and I don't know, have you looked at the new Inflation Reduction Act for retrofitting multifamily? Is there money in that for that?
There is, but last I heard, we don't know how it's coming into the system yet, where it's coming in.
Yeah, there are rebates that are going to take some time because they have to go to the states, and the state of Washington will have to figure out rules and how it's going to be distributed. Certainly in homes, if those rebates become available, they're going to be pretty amazing because they're going to help. You know, it's going to be up to $14,000 for retrofitting a home, and you can get, if your income level's right, you can get kind of the cash up front at point of sale. So it could help create a new wave of retrofit, like we've all been, you know, back in 2010, 11, we were all working on retrofit.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll be back there in another year. We'll see.
Well, as I mentioned, we are a community-based organization from Portland up to Vancouver, covering the Northwest. And these issues affect everyone, whether we live in multifamily or not. Air quality is an issue. And I think at this time, Nina, if you want to open it up, if we've got questions, Tom is our resident expert.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael. You know, speaking of PSC, I just wanted to bring them to the forefront here real quick and just thank them for their sponsorship of this event. PSC not only helps manage a multifamily property such as condos or apartments, but they also help in the process of lowering the utility bills for those for those tenants, and reduce their overall energy usage with their energy efficient in-unit and common area equipment. And PSC has a multifamily retrofit incentive program where you can save also on cost of upgrades. And I've posted the link to their multifamily retrofit brochure. And this is a great screenshot of their website. I welcome you again to check out their residential programs, of their efficiency and green options, as well as their construction services. And then speaking of retrofits, I also wanted to call out, you know, King County Green Tools. Golly, they're a great program and provide, you know, help with where to start and what's available out there. They help key stakeholders green their built environment while addressing critical environmental issues such as global warming, habitat restoration, solid waste reduction, and community planning. Green Tools provides technical assistance and hands-on training and policy development through community partnerships in public and private sectors. They put really practice to work through community engagement. And what they have is a really great proactive website just filled with links, resources, and a really fun click-through kind of housing unit of where to start with retrofits and remodels. Just some great ideas. You can find information on green building certification programs, construction, also demolition, recycling, and reuse. I go to their website all the time to check King County's recycling rates and diversion rates and the work I do, as well as deconstruction techniques. They have a fantastic deconstruction advisory group committee that you can join. I believe Kinley joined us. If you have any questions, you can direct them at Kinley, and so much more. So please visit Green County Tools. And with that, I'm going to open up the floor to any last questions and discussion. At the Guild, we love this part of the event. We usually welcome participants to turn on their screen, turn on their videos if they feel comfortable, take the time to network, and also just to ask any follow-up questions of our speakers or engage in any sort of networking you'd like. We welcome that for everyone. And just a fun reminder, if you do have to hop off, this recording will be made available online for our members. Looks like Robert's got his hand up.
I do. Thank you. And sorry about the crazy background. All right. Ignore everything behind me. I work for Clear Result. I work on the PSC program. I have the pleasure of working with Michael Nile. And my question is for Tom. Tom, so in Seattle, with those older buildings that you brought up, one of the issues that we've run into is that whole heritage situation where they can't change the windows out because it's designated as a heritage building. How do you propose we find a way to get around that? It's a pretty big hurdle.
I don't know. I mean, sometimes I just feel like suck it up, change the windows, but I guess if there's a storm window product that you can put over it's like an antique leaded. Are these like leaded windows that are historically significant? Or are they just single pane?
You know, I don't know. I just reach out to the site and they say, oh, we've tried that. And the city said we can't change it because of historical designation. And we, unfortunately, the program doesn't cover storm windows. It covers window replacement, because I'm trying to offer them rebates to help cover the cost for replacing those windows. But by the way, anybody out there who wants help with rebates, you just let me know.
Yeah, I mean, there are retrofit windows that are meant for historic renovation. I know they probably cost more, but I would probably reach out to the Office of Sustainability and see if they can help get one hand of the city to cooperate with the other hand. And we're trying to make the city reduce carbon and more energy efficient. And if the historic renovation people aren't able to willing to, they need to work together and figure out a solution. I mean, I guess that's a non-technical opinion, but I know there are windows out there that are meant for historic renovation. There was a Passive House project in Philadelphia that Joe Giampetro was involved in that had historic renovation, and they had to flex the Passive House system somewhat, but I think they managed to get it certified.
Great, thank you. I guess Michael and I can talk about how to try to continue to work around this obstacle. And then I did have a question. Are you going to be sharing, not for you, Tom, but are you going to share the recording of this presentation so that I can send it out to PSE?
Yes, we will be sharing this recording. Robert, did you register on Eventbrite? I can also share a link via.
I did, even though my Eventbrite thing didn't work, and somebody special sent me a link.
I know, I apologize for that. I quickly sent it out to our participants. We apologize for the technical difficulties folks were experiencing logging in today's event, but yes, you will receive a link to the recording.
Thank you.
Question to Nina. Yeah, I have a question to throw out there for discussion, but I remember in the Community PowerWorks program, the big problem we had is that tenants don't have any power over their buildings, unless if it's Seattle Housing Authority or one of the land trusts. That there's management of the building that's got the same goals, but private landlords or these big real estate companies own these buildings are not motivated, especially if they have the tenants paying the bills. And so they don't have motivation to invest in better equipment or better efficiency. And so that's my question, is how do we extend some of these benefits, especially even if there are tax credits and things available? What can tenants do to try to get help with this stuff? How do we convince landlords to do this work?
One of the things we do through the utility programs, Tom, is to have conversations with these ownership groups that are important to them in the fact that they want to keep residents in place. On the rental side, the turnover has been incredible, especially in Seattle. I mean, over the last few years in COVID, you've got, I think it was as high as 40% of residents change apartment complexes at the end of their lease. And so to stem the flow of turnover, especially on the B and C properties, it's important to do the upgrades. And it's important to keep residents comfortable. The concern during COVID, we saw it spike across the board. People didn't want to be in multifamily. As you saw it, people were fleeing multifamily and looking for single family, even if they had to drive an hour and a half to their job. Mm-hmm. It's a benefit. I mean, you take air sealing for a minute. And yes, air sealing lowers on the Puget Sound, when they seal that entire envelope, it lowers the energy cost for the resident. It makes it healthier for the resident. It lowers the sound for the resident, as well as other benefits for the resident. But what's it do for the ownership group? Well, it makes it a more attractive, say, B property for a renter. It also protects the building. If you don't have moisture flowing through the floor, through the walls, you're saving that building. You're extending the life of that building. So what we do on utility programs is we sell the benefits to the ownership group.
Property owners. Mhm. Well, that's great. Hopefully that'll be enough.
I think it will be enough because, well, maybe it won't be enough, but it'll help because I think more and more pressure is coming. As we have more and more organizations and agencies creating awareness. Northwest Eco Building, we're constantly trying to create that awareness that is putting pressure on ownership groups to improve their properties. If you look at the real estate trusts, the large trusts that own large swaths of apartments across this country, they've all got sustainability people working for them now that are improving their properties, improving the health of their properties, the energy efficiency of their properties, and they're getting pressure. And like you said, the benchmarking programs that are out there, Tom, they're also putting pressure on these guys. So
Right.
we're gonna get there. It's just going slower than we'd like to see it.
Right. We did a little bit of consulting with the developer who was trying to develop a national approach to buying multifamily buildings that were distressed and retrofitting them for energy efficiency. I mean, he was hoping for net zero, but and then renting them out. But that was one of my questions to him was, is this is going to increase the cost of the apartments? And that's the other critical thing, is that people are already really stressed with the rents that they have to pay now. So, I mean, that he was earnestly working on that problem, trying to get this the whole thing to work without significant rent increases.
Well, I don't want to just talk about one of our sponsors because we have Tacoma Power, who does a great job with rebate programs. But I do want to just refer back to Puget Sound Energy for a moment. Their air sealing program is probably 100% paid for at this point with the rebate levels with the contractors that we have, unless it's a really cut up building or it's a 3-story or it's got other complications. This is a great program to tighten that building up and reduce energy. And the ownership doesn't have to pay anything in a lot of cases. So, and even with Tacoma, with their programs, with their insulation programs, I mean, it just, some of these programs, the contractors are able to go in for the rebate amount and upgrade these properties. So it's just a matter of awareness to a certain degree. We want to do everything we can. And fans and ventilation, the utilities are great for that. We want to make sure we're getting these things out in front of as many of these properties as possible to have them take advantage of them.
Yeah, and maybe if we add the Inflation Reduction Act tax credits and investment, I know there are commercial investment tax credits, and you can create a package that will really make sense to firms.
Awesome. Thank you for that information. We've got about a minute left for our time frame that we've scheduled. But I can leave the conversation going. I do want to be respectful of folks' times. I know it is midway through the workday, and and provide Michael, give you some remarks.
I just want to add, Nina mentioned this in the beginning. As Nina mentioned, a lot of our members watch these presentations in the weeks after they're first sent out. And there may be questions that come up. Please, please, please feel free to reach out to any of our sponsors. We love our sponsors. That's what keeps a nonprofit like the Northwest Eco Building going. And please feel free to reach out to any of our presenters as well if you have questions. Because people watch it at different times, it's not always live for them. So please support our sponsors, reach out to them. We've got wonderful, wonderful sponsors. Thank you, Nina.
And I just was going to, I'm dropping in a link to the chat of an article on Bayview Tower in Seattle, which was a really pioneering retrofit of a multifamily building that Seattle Housing Authority manages.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom. Great. I'll go ahead and stop the recording. But again, I want to thank you all so much for joining today's Northwest Eco Building Guild's 4th annual Multifamily Housing Symposium. We are really so grateful for the speakers, Kathleen, Rand, Tom, and Michael today. And of course, super grateful for our sponsors that made this all happen. So we appreciate you and hope you all stay in touch and join us at the next event. I'll leave the event open just a little bit longer for any last minute questions for our speakers or discussion topics. And yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Thursday. Happy spring.